Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling, well, a pretty big question. What does it actually mean to live in truly amazing times? You hear that phrase and, maybe you think technology, breakthroughs, but we're diving into something different today. We've got this analysis of a sermon based on Paul's preaching back in Acts 13, and it defines amazing times and even greatness in a totally different way through hardship, actually, and through spiritual change.
Right. And that core idea, it really flips the script, doesn't it? When we say amazing, yeah, our minds jump straight to like smartphones, instant payments, modern medicine, all the stuff we see and touch. But this material argues that the most amazing thing about right now, it's spiritual. It's not about a gadget. It's about our spiritual status.
Okay, so what is that status then, according
Oh.
to this?
It's living after the cross, living under what gets called the new covenant. And look, for anyone not deep in the terminology, the new covenant isn't just some, abstract theological point. It's about a massive shift in like personal access to God. We don't need the old system of sacrifices, the physical temple in the same way. The idea that you can have instant forgiveness and maybe even more importantly, the Holy Spirit actually living inside you. That direct line, that guidance, that's presented as the real breakthrough, the biggest access upgrade humanity's ever had, you could say.
Oh, okay. That really does reframe things. So we're not just sort of watching history unfold or using cool tech. We're actually participants living in the reality of God's promises. So our mission for this deep dive is to explore Paul's message in Acts 13, which is basically kicking off the first big missionary push, and see how this whole greatness through struggle idea might change how we approach our everyday lives. So to start, let's look at that initial journey. Acts 13, Paul and Barnabas heading out from Antioch. They get on a ship, travel, start preaching city by city.
Yeah, and it's so important to get the picture right here. We tend to, I don't know, romanticize these things like it was a smooth trip. But the notes we're looking at really hammer home the reality. These weren't luxury cruises. They were likely small, pretty rough ships, dangerous conditions, unpredictable weather, and they faced opposition almost immediately, everywhere they went. This wasn't the easy option for spreading a message. It was probably the hardest way they could have done it. And that commitment, that willingness to face the hard stuff, leads straight to the first big takeaway from the source. Greatness, at least in God's eyes, it seems, rarely comes easy. It very often comes through the hardship. Paul chose the struggle, the call demanded movement, not comfort.
That's interesting. So is the idea that we should, deliberately look for hardship? Or is it more about being ready for it when we're pursuing something important?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the latter. The focus is on the mission, the calling. The difficulty is almost unavoidable if the thing you're carrying matters. Think about it if you're responsible for something valuable, whether it's this message Paul carried or, I don't know, a major ethical stand today.
Mhm.
The path isn't going to be smooth. And translating that to now, well, the source gives some pretty down-to-earth examples, like staying patient in a really stressful, maybe even toxic workplace because you feel you're meant to be a positive presence there. That takes grit. Or choosing the honest path, even when you know it's going to be painful in the short term, and a little white lie would just smooth everything over instantly.
Or, yeah, like the example of taking real time to pray with a friend who's clearly stressed and rushed, even when your own day is absolutely jammed. Those little inconvenient choices. That's faithfulness in action, right? Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Connecting that daily grind back to Israel's history. Paul, speaking in the synagogue, he knows his audience. He connects this idea of greatness coming from difficulty straight back to their own story. He reminds them, God made Israel great. That's the word he uses, while they were slaves in Egypt. Their national greatness wasn't born in palaces. It was forged in, slavery under Pharaoh's oppression.
Exactly. And then right after talking about getting out of Egypt, there's this really beautiful word used to describe the 40 years in the wilderness. God carried them. That's the term. And if you dig into it, it means more than just putting up with them. It suggests God was actively sustaining them, even nurturing them. Despite all their complaining, their rebellion, their weaknesses, he wasn't just walking next to them, annoyed. He was actively supporting their journey, lifting them almost. And that leads to the second big truth. God's patience is immense. He carries us even when we fail, even spectacularly. We often think, oh, I messed up, that's it, I'm disqualified, or that God's just frustrated and backing off. But this passage suggests the opposite. God keeps walking with you. He's willing to carry you through the very wilderness you might have helped create.
That difference between just tolerating someone and actively carrying them. Yeah, that's a powerful distinction, a real deep dive point. And Paul's next bit in Acts 13 throws another curveball, this time about timing. He mentions, almost casually, that it took about 450 years for God to get his people from Egypt through the desert into the Promised Land and then through that whole period of the Judges.
450 years. Just let that sink in for a second.
Right.
We want change overnight, right? If a project doesn't show results in a few months, we ditch it. If a prayer isn't answered quickly, we think it's a no, or we just, give up asking. But 450 years. That's this huge, undeniable reminder that God's clock is just not our clock. Not even close.
So what does the analysis suggest was the point of that long, slow, grinding process? Did it achieve something that, say, a quick miracle wouldn't have?
Oh, absolutely. According to this perspective, a quick fix changes a situation. But a long, difficult process, that changes people. It builds character. It forges identity. Over those centuries, God wasn't just moving them geographically. He was shaping who they were as a nation, teaching lessons about faithfulness, about turning back to him, proving he was reliable generation after generation. It shows God's playing the long game. He's thinking about legacy, not just our immediate comfort or discomfort.
Yeah, I think we all could stand to internalize that a bit more, especially when we get discouraged because, I don't know, a personal goal or something we feel called to do is taking way longer than we expected.
Right. If God's willing to invest centuries in his plan for a whole people group, maybe we can trust him with our individual timelines, even when they feel painfully slow. It really forces the question, are we signing up for the marathon or just the sprint?
Which kind of leads us nicely into this whole idea of greatness itself. We all have this desire, don't we, to be great at something, a great parent, a great leader, make a great contribution. And the message seems to say that desire isn't wrong in itself. But maybe our definition of greatness is often skewed towards, like, worldly success, fame, influence, money.
That's the key distinction, isn't it? Does the source offer a different definition? Because if it's just suffer now for a bigger platform later, well, that's not exactly revolutionary. But the point here seems to be that God's version of greatness is about internal qualities. Faithfulness under pressure, solid character, perseverance, that's the goal. External influence might come, or it might not, but it's secondary.
Okay, so the big challenge the core question this message puts to us is, are we willing to go through the process God uses to build that kind of internal greatness? Israel got there through slavery and wandering. Paul got there through constant hardship and opposition. We often want the outcome without the tough stuff.
And isn't that just the story of modern life? We crave the shortcut, the easy pill, the life hack, the way to bypass the actual work. But this source material is basically saying, no, you got to do the reps, like training for a race. You don't get strong by just wishing for it. It comes through consistent effort, day in, day out, trusting that the process itself is building something valuable, even when it feels, well, boring or repetitive.
And that lack of immediate reward, that's often where our faith or commitment wavers. Right?
Totally. Which brings up that great illustration used in the source about walking in Rome. Imagine you're following your phone's GPS through those ancient cobblestone streets. It takes you down these narrow, winding alleys you've never seen. You can't see where you're going. You start wondering, is this right? Am I lost? Why didn't it just take me down the main road?
Yeah, that feeling of being lost or thinking this can't possibly be the right way, that resonates with so many parts of life, spiritual or otherwise.
Exactly. And the point being made is that often that feeling of discomfort, of uncertainty, those winding side streets, they actually lead you to what the source calls places of deep encounter. Just like those unexpected Roman alleys might suddenly open onto an amazing historical site linked to Paul, God's seemingly inefficient or uncomfortable paths can lead us to places of deeper purpose and encounter with him that we have missed on the easy, predictable route.
Okay, let's try and pull these threads together for everyone listening. Make it really practical. We've hit on 3 big ideas. Greatness often requires going through hardship. God's incredibly patient and actually carries us, and his time frame is way bigger than ours. So what does this all mean for us, like this week?
Well, to make it super concrete, the source material boils it down to 3 specific actions you could try. First, when you hit difficulty, try to catch that automatic why me reaction and instead consciously ask a different question. What is God trying to shape in me through this? Just asking that shifts you from feeling like a victim to being, well, a participant in your own growth.
That's a powerful shift. Requires real intention, though. What's the second action?
Second, remember God's patience with you, that carrying patience we talked about with Israel, and then make an effort to extend that same kind of patience to yourself and to the people around you this week. Be generous with grace.
Okay. Patience towards self and others. And the third one? tied to that 450-year timeline.
Yeah. The third is about surrendering your timeline. Maybe even make it a conscious prayer sometime this week. Lord, I trust your timing more than I trust my own.
Hmm.
It's that necessary bit of humility when you're aiming for something lasting, something built on character, not just quick results. And really, the big encouragement weaving through all of this is that you are living in the most amazing time. Not because of tech, but because of access to God. He hasn't called us to an easy life, but to greatness in Him. And yes, that involves difficulty, but it also means we face it with His Spirit inside us, with His patience covering us, His strength available to us. Our small steps of faithfulness, they're part of that same big mission Paul was on.
Right. And before we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a final thought and maybe a few questions to chew on or talk over with someone else. Building on this idea of process and patience, first challenge is maybe to ask yourself, where in your life right now do you feel God might be asking you to just put in the reps of faithfulness, consistency over comfort,
Yeah.
and where you may be tempted to look for a shortcut instead?
And maybe also take a moment sometime this week to think back. Can you remember a specific time when you really felt God carrying you through a tough season, a wilderness time? Just recalling His past faithfulness can seriously boost your trust for whatever uncertain path you're on today.
Good one. And finally, maybe reflect on just how radical this new covenant reality is. How does knowing you have the Spirit inside you and that forgiveness is already secured, how does that actually change how you view your own potential, your ability to stick things out compared to, say, living under the old system? We really appreciate you joining us for this deep dive into greatness through hardship. Our hope is that your week ahead is filled with courage, with patience, and with that powerful sense that you genuinely are living in the most amazing times life under the new covenant.